Lillian had worked for the Cresswell family for years. She was quiet, humble, and never caused trouble. Everyone saw her as just another maid in the big mansion. But one night changed everything. That night, her secret came out in the worst way possible. The billionaire, Mr. James Cresswell, came home after 6 months away, only to find Lillian in his bathroom, crying in pain, trying to give birth all alone. It was the same bathroom where his wife had died years ago, the same place he had promised never to step into again. What happened next shocked the whole household, and it's something none of them would ever forget. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Lillian woke up before sunrise, just like she did every day. The halls of Cresswell Mansion were cold and quiet at that hour. The smell of polish and soap filled the air as she started cleaning the staircase rails, her mind somewhere else entirely. She had learned to move fast and stay unnoticed. That was how she survived in a world where rich people didn't see people like her. Her belly was beginning to show, but she wrapped it tightly with a scarf under her uniform. No one knew she was pregnant, not even Margaret, the senior housekeeper who liked to gossip about everyone in the staff quarters. Lillian had promised herself she would keep it a secret. If Mr. Cresswell found out, she would lose her job. And with nowhere to go, she didn't know how she'd take care of her baby. The father of her child had left months ago. He had promised marriage, but the moment she told him she was expecting, he disappeared. Still, she never let sadness stop her from doing her work. The mansion was huge, full of glass walls, gold picture frames, and memories of people who weren't there anymore. Every corner seemed to whisper about Mrs. Cresswell, the late wife who died suddenly while giving birth to twins in the very house Lillian now worked in. The twins, Eli and Eden, were 7 years old, now playful, kind, and full of questions. They adored Lillian more than anyone else. Every morning, they waited at the kitchen door, watching her prepare their breakfast. "Lily, can we help?" Eden would ask, standing on tiptoes to reach the counter. She would smile and hand him a spoon. "Only if you promise not to spill the milk again." Eli giggled. "We'll try our best." To them, she wasn't just the maid. She was the only warm person in the house. Mr. Cresswell, their father, had become colder since his wife's death. He worked all the time and rarely smiled. He loved his sons, but he didn't know how to show it. He left for meetings, for business trips, for anything that kept him away from memories. When he left for a 6-month business trip overseas, the mansion felt even emptier. Before leaving, he told the staff, "Keep the boys safe. No one touches the master bedroom or the east bathroom." Everyone understood that bathroom was where tragedy had happened. It had been locked for years. Lillian nodded quietly, not asking questions. She focused on keeping the twins happy. She made their meals, read them bedtime stories, and listened when they missed their mother. Her belly grew each week, but she hid it carefully with loose dresses and aprons. Sometimes, late at night, she stood in front of the mirror and whispered to herself, "Just a little longer. When the baby comes, we'll find our way somehow." Then came the night the storm arrived. The wind howled through the garden, and thunder rolled across the sky. Eli and Eden couldn't sleep, so Lillian stayed with them until they closed their eyes. But as she tried to stand, a sharp pain shot through her body. She froze, clutching her stomach. It was too early, she wasn't ready. Her breath came fast, her palms sweaty. The pain came again, stronger this time. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying out. She didn't want to wake the boys or alert the housekeeper. She thought it would pass, but it didn't. Her knees weakened. She could barely walk. She tried to reach her small staff room, but the next wave of pain knocked her down to the floor. She crawled slowly toward the nearest bathroom, the one at the end of the east hallway. The same one everyone was told to stay away from. Rain beat against the windows as she pushed the door open. The lights flickered. Her reflection looked pale and frightened. "Please, not now," she whispered, holding her belly. Hours passed like minutes. Her screams grew louder. Downstairs, the old housekeeper woke up, startled. Before she could reach the stairs, a car stopped outside, headlights cutting through the rain. It was Mr. James Cresswell, back from his trip. He stepped out of the car, exhausted and cold, carrying his briefcase. When he entered the mansion, the first sound he heard was a woman's cry echoing through the hall. Then, the voice of his twins shouting from upstairs, "Daddy, come quick! It's Lillian!" He dropped everything and ran. When he burst into the east bathroom, he froze in place. Lillian was inside the tub, soaked in water and sweat, holding her belly, her face twisted in pain. The twins stood nearby, crying in panic. For a long moment, he couldn't move. His heart stopped. The scene was too familiar, the same smell, the same sound, the same place where his wife had taken her last breath. "Lillian?" he whispered, his voice shaking. Her eyes met his, full of fear and pain. "Sir, please help me. I can't do this alone." He stood there, trapped between the past and the present, his hands trembling. Then Eli screamed, "Daddy, please! She's hurting!" That was when something inside him changed. He took a deep breath, stepped closer, and knelt beside her. "Hold on, Lillian," he said quietly. "You're not alone anymore." James froze for a moment, his eyes wide, his heart racing. The thunder outside shook the windows, and the rain pounded against the glass like it was trying to break in. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The maid he'd trusted for years, the quiet woman who barely spoke, was in his bathroom, crying, bleeding, and giving birth. And in that same place, that cursed place, his wife had died. For a second, everything inside him wanted to run. He could almost hear his late wife's voice, the same helpless cry she gave before she slipped away in his arms. "Not again," he whispered under his breath. His hands shook, his chest tight, and all the air in the room seemed to vanish. Then he heard Eli's voice, small, scared, and trembling. "Daddy, please, help her." Eden clung to his leg, sobbing. "She's hurting, Daddy. She needs you." Those words snapped something inside him. He blinked, took a shaky breath, and stepped forward. "Okay," he said quietly. "It's all right. Daddy's here now." He knelt beside Lillian, rolled up his sleeves, and tried to remember everything he could from that night years ago. This time, he would not stand by helplessly. "Lillian, listen to me," he said softly. "You have to breathe, in and out, slowly." Her face was pale, her lips dry. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered weakly. "I didn't mean for this to happen here." "Don't talk," he said gently. "Just breathe. You're going to be fine." The twins ran to get towels. "Bring me warm water," James ordered. His voice was firm. Now the fear still there, but hidden under determination. Minutes felt like hours. Lillian screamed as another wave of pain hit her. James wiped her forehead with a towel. His hands trembled, but he kept going. "You're doing great," he said softly. "Just one more push." Tears filled her eyes. "I can't." "Yes, you can," he said, his voice breaking a little. "I'm right here, Lillian. You're not alone." Another contraction came, and this time she screamed so loud the walls seemed to shake. And then, a sound. A tiny, sharp cry that cut through the storm. The baby was here. For a long second, no one moved. The only sound in the room was the baby's cry. James stared at the small body in his hands, red, wet, but alive. His eyes filled with tears. He quickly wrapped the baby in a towel and placed her gently on Lillian's chest. "It's a girl," he said quietly. Lillian sobbed weakly, holding the baby close. Thank you, sir." James couldn't speak. His mind went blank. All he could think about was how the same bathroom that once took his wife's life had just given life to another woman and a child. He looked up at the ceiling and whispered under his breath, "Maybe this was meant to happen." The twins, wide-eyed, inched closer. "She's so small," Eli said softly. Is she going to be okay? Eden asked. James nodded slowly. Yes, she's strong, just like her mother. A few minutes later, Margaret, the housekeeper, rushed in, her face pale. Sir, what happened? Call Dr. Mason, James said quickly. Tell him it's urgent. Within half an hour, the doctor arrived, drenched from the storm. He examined Lillian carefully and smiled. You did well, both of you. She's weak, but she'll be fine. When they carried Lillian to the ambulance, James followed, still holding the baby in his arms. The doctor tried to take the child from him, but he shook his head. It's okay, James said quietly. I've got her. At St. Anne's Hospital, the rain finally began to ease. Lillian was placed in a private room. The baby slept beside her in a small glass crib. James sat in a chair near the window, silent. His shirt was wet, his hands still shaking slightly. He hadn't felt that much fear or that much peace in years. When the doctor came in, he smiled gently. Sir, you saved her life. If you hadn't acted fast, both mother and child could have been in danger. James looked up, tired but calm. I just did what I had to. The doctor nodded and left them alone. Hours later, Lillian woke up. Her voice was weak. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. James stood and walked closer. You don't have to, he said. You've worked hard for this family. You deserved help. She looked down at her baby, smiling faintly. Her name is Lily. He looked at the baby for a long moment. Lily, he repeated softly. That's a beautiful name. There was a quiet pause. Then he said, You should rest. I'll make sure you and Lily have everything you need. She looked at him, surprised. You don't have to do that, sir. I know, he said, turning toward the window. But I want to. Days passed. Lillian grew stronger. The twins visited every day, carrying flowers and small drawings for her. They loved baby Lily. They said she looked like a tiny angel. James spent more time at the hospital than at the office. He didn't understand why, but something about being near that baby made him feel at peace. One evening, he stood outside the room, watching Lillian rock her baby to sleep. The nurse beside him whispered, You care about them, don't you? He didn't answer, he just smiled faintly. When he walked into the room, Lillian looked up. Mr. Cresswell, she said softly. You've done more than enough already. When we leave here, I'll go. You don't have to worry about us. He looked at her, quiet for a moment. Why would you leave? He asked. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Because this isn't my world, sir. I was just the maid. I don't belong here. He sighed and sat down across from her. Lillian, he said gently, the night you gave birth, I was terrified. Not because of what happened, but because it reminded me of my wife's death. That bathroom used to be a place of pain for me, but you turned it into something else. You brought life back into that house. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, he said softly. You gave me something I didn't know. I needed a second chance to care again. Lillian looked at him, speechless. For the first time, she saw warmth in his eyes. He stood up and smiled faintly. Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. As he left the room, he glanced back once more at the baby sleeping peacefully. He whispered under his breath, Welcome to the world, little one. 2 weeks passed since the night of the storm. The rain was gone, replaced by clear blue skies over Cresswell Mansion. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel cold. It felt alive again. Lillian returned home with baby Lily in her arms. Margaret and the twins welcomed her at the door with smiles and excitement. Eli ran up first, his voice full of joy. Lily's back! Can I hold her? Lillian smiled. Careful. She's still small. Eden peeked from behind his brother. Can she smile yet? Not yet, Lillian said softly. But soon. The boys laughed, their happiness filling the hall. From the staircase, James Cresswell stood watching them quietly. There was something different about his eyes now, softer, calmer, human. He came down slowly and said, "Welcome home, Lillian." She turned, surprised. "Sir, I didn't expect you to be here." He nodded slightly. "I wanted to be." Margaret took the twins to the garden, leaving the two adults alone. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then James said quietly, "The doctor said you're fully recovered." "Yes, sir," she replied, "thanks to you." He looked at the baby in her arms. "And how's she doing?" Lillian smiled. "She eats well and sleeps a lot. The twins can't stay away from her." James nodded, but his thoughts were far away. He still remembered the night he walked into that bathroom, the same place that haunted him for years. That image of Lillian crying, fighting for life, and the baby's first cry it replayed in his mind often. But instead of pain, it now brought him peace. A few days later, he called Lillian to his study. The large room smelled of old books and cedar wood. On the desk lay a neat folder, a pen, and a letter. Lillian stood nervously by the door. "Is everything all right, sir?" she asked quietly. James looked up. "Yes, everything's fine. Please, sit down." She sat, unsure of what was happening. He opened the folder and pushed it toward her. Inside were a few documents, all neatly signed. "I've made some arrangements," he began. Her eyes widened. "Arrangements?" "Yes," he said. "For Lily." She blinked. "For Lily?" He nodded. "I've set up an education fund for her. It'll cover her school, college, and everything she'll ever need until she turns 18. Lillian froze. She looked down at the papers, then back at him. "Sir, you don't have to do that. You've already helped me so much." He shook his head. "I know I don't have to, but I want to." He leaned forward slightly. "You don't know what that night did to me, Lillian. I spent years running from the memory of my wife's death. I closed off every part of myself that could feel. But when you cried for help, something inside me woke up. It felt like life was giving me another chance to make things right." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," he said softly. "Just raise her well. That's all I ask." She nodded slowly, her voice shaking. "I promise I will." He smiled faintly. "Good. And you'll stay here, you and Lily both. The twins already adore her, and I think this house needs her laughter." Lillian tried to hold back tears. "Sir, you're too kind." He looked at her for a moment. "No, Lillian. Kindness is what you showed me. You worked here for years without complaining, without expecting anything. You gave my sons warmth when I couldn't. If anyone deserves kindness, it's you." She wiped her face quietly, her heart full. From outside the door, the sound of laughter came, the twins running through the hall with baby Lily in their tiny arms. "Look, Daddy!" Eli shouted. She smiled. James turned and smiled. "She did?" Eli nodded proudly. "Yes." She smiled at Eden. Eden laughed. "She likes me better." Lillian stood at the doorway, watching them with tears in her eyes. The sight was simple but powerful, a family she never imagined being part of, all because of one night that could have ended in tragedy. That evening, James went to the east bathroom for the first time since his wife's death. The door creaked softly as he stepped in. The lights were dim, the air cool. He stood there, quietly, remembering. Then he smiled faintly and whispered, "It's finally over." He closed the door behind him, not out of pain this time, but peace. Weeks passed, and the mansion changed in ways no one expected. The staff smiled more. The twins laughed louder. James started coming home early from work, spending evenings reading to the boys and sometimes even helping Lillian feed the baby. Every night before bed, he checked on Lily's crib. Sometimes she'd be awake, staring at him with wide eyes. He'd whisper, "You're safe, little one. You're safe now." One morning, the twins came running into his office. "Daddy, can we take Lily to the garden?" Eli asked. "Please," Eden added, tugging his sleeve. James chuckled. "Yes, but be careful." He followed them outside and saw Lillian sitting under the big oak tree, smiling as the boys played. The baby giggled softly in her arms, her tiny fingers trying to grab the sunlight. For a long moment, James just watched them, the maid who had once been a stranger, and the child who had brought light back into his home. He walked over and sat beside her. "She looks happy," he said quietly. Lillian smiled. "She is. She's surrounded by love." He nodded, his eyes still on the baby. "You know, I used to think I'd never feel peace again, but every time I hear her laugh, I do." Lillian looked at him gently. "Maybe she came into your life for that reason." James turned toward her and smiled faintly. "Maybe she came into our lives for that reason." Later that evening, after everyone went to bed, James stood alone on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. He thought about everything: his wife, his grief, his sons, and now Lillian and baby Lily. He whispered softly, "Thank you for giving me another chance." The next morning, he called everyone into the living room, the twins, Lillian, and even Margaret. He held a small silver bracelet in his hand. "This," he said, "belonged to my wife. She always said she wanted to pass it down to our daughter one day, but we never had one." He turned to Lillian and placed the bracelet in her hand. "I want Lily to have it. She deserves it." Lillian's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, are you sure?" He nodded. "Yes. She may not carry my name, but she carries something greater, the chance to heal this family." The twins clapped and hugged him. "Daddy, that's beautiful." He smiled and hugged them both. "It is, isn't it?" From that day on, the mansion was never quiet again. Laughter filled the halls, and even the walls seemed to breathe again. Lillian continued to work there, but it was no longer just a job, it was home. James kept his promise, providing for Lily's every need. Years later, when Lily turned 18, a small letter would be found in the same study where it all began. It was written by James himself, years before his passing. It said, "To Lily, the little girl who brought life back to this house. You were born in a moment of fear, but you grew in love. I promised to take care of you until you turned 18, but the truth is, you took care of me every day since the moment you were born.